15th episode begins as the morning of the Battle of Monmouth in 1778 dawns almost too peacefully with the distant playing of drums. But Jamie has clearly already been awake for hours when Claire finally rolls over in their tent to check on him. It's only one of the scenes in which Jamie ends up monologuing to captivating ends. It initially seems strange at first to hear Jamie wax nostalgic about Ellen's death, but then he admits that he lost his mother so young that she never even had a single gray hair on her head. Seeing all the gray in Claire's hair now, Jamie says, is a reminder of how many years they've had together and how much longer she's lived. It doesn't seem like an ominous remark at the time, but in hindsight, Jamie isn't the one who needs their love to shield him from the dangers of battle. As she prepares to send Jamie off to the front lines, Claire refuses to say anything that could be construed as eternally parting words, while Jamie confesses that he wishes his last words to William hadn't been issued in anger. It's here, too, that we're given the first of several scenes featuring a sepia-toned Jamie and Claire, sitting by the campfire with nothing but stars overhead. Initially, these moments seem conjured by Claire pausing to reflect here and there, but, as the episode eventually reveals, they might have an even more devastating significance. For the moment, however, Claire's too busy dealing with the Army's doctor, Captain Leckie, who readily dismisses her medical expertise solely because of her gender, despite Denzel Hunter's protests. After both of them try and fail to plead her value to Leckie, Claire and Rachel take point on Triage in tents outside the church, which has been turned into a makeshift hospital. Later, Claire brings an injured soldier into the church herself as the battle begins to rage, and Leckie initially protests her diagnosis of a pneumothorax. But when her aspiration technique saves the man's life, the doctor is clearly forced to eat his words. Nothing hits better than Claire's competency shining through, especially when men have to shut up and let her do what she's best at. Back in 1739, Roger and Buck have set up camp by the river after sending Roger's father back to his own time. An emotional farewell, to be sure, but one that clearly has Roger thinking about the importance of family. At the very least, it's left him more inclined to spill the beans to Buck about the other man's true parentage, now that they're literally out in the middle of nowhere. Initially, Roger broaches the subject by admitting that Buck's mother is a time traveler too, but it doesn't take long for the rest of the truth to come out. Understandably, Buck feels like an idiot for not realizing that Gillis Duncan was his birth mother while he was literally in the woman's home. Not to mention after his father, Dougal Mackenzie, showed up for their first meet-cute in the process. But Roger admits he was afraid that if Buck had learned the truth too soon, he might have done something that could have changed the course of history, and potentially even resulted in him never even being born. Buck storms off in a moment of frustration, but then rightfully points out that Dougal had only showed up at Gillis's house looking for Roger. So who knows if his parents would have ever met otherwise. Meanwhile, Lord John Grey and Ian have caught up to the Hessians who are holding William captive. At first, they fib their way into the camp by claiming they've arrived per Captain Richardson's orders, but their leader, Oberst, is immediately skeptical of their story. Still, he agrees to bring William out so the two can verify that he's mostly unharmed, if a little battered and bruised. A tense standoff ensues, as the Hessians refuse to turn over William, but before one of them can even so much as pull out his pistol, John kills him with a single shot. Bullets are exchanged, and Ian allows Oberst to escape as John frees William from his shackles, but then thinks better of it when the Hessian warns him that he will live to regret the decision one day. Perhaps Ian's thinking of Arch Bug and doesn't want to live the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, especially when he has his new wife's safety to concern himself with now. After parting ways with John and William, Ian doubles back, tracks Oberst down, and kills the Hessian with a knife to the chest. It seems that Rachel's fear that her husband wouldn't be capable of making the tough choice to kill is unfounded, but Ian seems poised to be changed forever now that he has more blood on his hands. Back at Lallybroch, at two different points in time, Roger and Brianna have the same idea when it comes to checking in with each other. leaving a letter inside the desk in the Laird's study. Before Brianna can drop in her own message for Roger to find, another drawer pops open to reveal his letter. Now, Bree knows exactly where he's traveled back to, 1739, so a reunion for this family seems all but imminent, especially once she brings both of her kids back to the Stones, and Mandy gets a running head start. Things aren't going as smoothly for William, by contrast. Once he and John make it back to the British camp, as he learns from a tearful Fanny that Jane has been arrested for the murder of Captain Harkness in his absence. But does William have enough authority to stop her hanging from taking place? Historically, the Battle of Monmouth was something of a lost cause for both sides, with neither the Continentals nor the British really landing a decisive victory. So perhaps Claire was onto something when she admitted to having a bad feeling about it. Now that the British have been forced into retreating, however, their trek will take them right past where Claire, Rachel, Denzel, and the others are camped tending to the wounded. And everyone has been ordered to evacuate before the platoon of redcoats arrives. But Claire digs her heels in, refusing to abandon the injured men she has an obligation to, even as Lecky pleads with her to leave. Finally, respectfully addressing her as Dr. Fraser, the captain prepares to depart with everyone else, just in time for Claire to receive the news that an unharmed Jamie is on his way back too. But the British passing by in such close quarters to similarly armed Continental soldiers leads to a rather predictable outcome, in which insults are traded, guns are flashed, and bullets are exchanged. Before Jamie can successfully order his men to stand down, he realizes Claire has been shot in the abdomen. After carrying a bleeding Claire into the church where others are sheltered in place, Jamie is dismayed to learn that Lecky, for all his proper medical training, can do nothing to remove the bullet. But Jamie not only refuses to let his wife die, he refuses to leave his wife, period, even when he's ordered to do so. In what could be considered one of the most badass moves of the series, Jamie commands one of his soldiers to strip off his coat and shirt, dips his fingers in Claire's blood, and uses it to write an official resignation of his commission as Brigadier General on the man's naked back. While Claire fights to remain conscious, she manages to tell Jamie to fetch Denzel, the only doctor who might be capable of performing the surgery to remove the bullet. As Claire hovers on the precipice between life and death, Jamie prays over her, begging God not to take his wife from him. Thankfully, Denzel and Rachel arrive just in time, bearing another thoughtful gift basket from Lafayette himself. Claire, recalling the Roquefort, reminds Denzel that the cheese's mold can be used to make penicillin, for after the procedure, and as Dr. Hunter begins his work, asking Jamie to resume his praying, we see the night sky from Claire's point of view, with one star still burning, even as the rest fades to black.